as your business gets bigger, your life should get better. And I think that doesn't happen for a lot of people. They panic, they're overwhelmed, and actually your life gets worse.
Yeah. Everyone seems to be telling you to go online if you want to make more money as a personal trainer. We are not going to do that. Quite the opposite, in fact. In this episode, we're going to talk about not only how to get fully booked as an in-person trainer, but what comes after that. What comes next? Because for us, that's the most exciting moment in a personal trainer's journey. We'll cover the 4 pillars of business and what you need to install and build if you're going to do something special. And then the 3 phases that every trainer needs to go through to make this happen. This is part 1 of a 3-part series of Beyond Fully Booked. Let's dive in.
Hello, and welcome to episode number 66.
Oh yeah.
That's when we won the World Cup.
This is going to be a good one. This is great, so stay tuned.
This is the one, Bobby Moore style.
Yeah, that's it.
How are you, mate?
I'm very well, thank you. Usual early start for me this morning, but I'm happy to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one. This is something that I think this is one of the things that helps us from a business perspective, separate us from so many other gurus, mentors, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
This is a real belief system for us that we're about to dive into, the idea of going beyond fully booked as an in-person coach.
Yes.
It's something that not enough people know about, and it's an amazing option and something that over the last 4 years we've been able to help hundreds of coaches achieve, and it's been a game changer, right?
Yes, and actually, while we were walking up to the studio in our wonderful little studio here, we were actually talking about, and I don't want to go into AI because this episode is going to be about not just getting fully booked, but what happens after that, right? But in this world of AI that we live in, I think it's only becoming more powerful. It's separating you as an in-person coach that if we keep that face-to-face component to your business, treat it as like a feature, doesn't mean you have to stick to a traditional one-on-one model necessarily. That's not what we're saying, and we are going to unpack that.
Yeah.
But in a world of AI, actually, that in-person connection is becoming more valuable. So it means that you can earn more money if you set up the right business model.
Yeah, we were chatting about some stuff we've been listening to, which is like, as all of these things proliferate and grow in the world of artificial intelligence, online coaches, which is, by the way, fine if that's who you are and what you want to do, but we're just coming at it from another angle and what we believe in. But online coaches are definitely going to find it a lot harder to stand out, to be authentic, because they're going to be replicated so well by AI. The one thing that AI is never going to replace is like emotion and connection. And that's one of the big things as a face-to-face coach that you have that can never be replaced.
Yeah.
The bottleneck, or the perceived bottleneck, is that, well, when my diary is full, when I've got 30 clients and I'm doing 30 hours a week, there's nowhere else to go.
Yeah.
And that's what going beyond fully booked is all about. And that's what we want to introduce today in part 1. And we've got, three episodes on this because it's such a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We what we'll do is, I think the next thing we'll go into is look at like fully booked as it's like a checkpoint. So imagine, there's that, if you're climbing a mountain, Mount Kilimanjaro, you have like checkpoints. I don't know if there's like a specific word for them, but like
base camp.
Base
right?
camp, that's it. Yeah, so you hit base camp. And base camp is like, you can't go up to the top of the mountain without passing through base camp, because that's where you refuel, you restock, you have a rest, you do all the stuff like medical and all that
or
stuff.
you die, which seems to be...
That's the other option, or you just sack it off and don't climb the mountain. But we see that's a pretty smart metaphor for getting fully booked. And we think that we could go as far as to say every personal trainer should go through to that base camp, fully booked base camp, at least to some level. Whether, it might not be 30 or 40 sessions, it might be 15 or it could be 20. But that will set you up beautifully for the next level. And there are a few things that we see and that we look for and that we want to help a trainer achieve at base camp before they then go on and climb the full mountain.
Yeah, I think the first thing to understand is that is just base camp. Like that's the first thing that we want to squash, is the idea that when you get fully booked as a...
Squash that, mate.
Let's squash it.
Squash it right down.
Like the link. Every time we speak to coaches that are not in our world, the common thing is, oh no, I'm fully booked, so I can't grow. Like I now need to go and do something else.
Yeah.
And the way that we have, not the way that we just see it, but the way that we prove it and have proven it for over 1,000 coaches now, is that actually fully booked is just the beginning. It's actually the first step. And that's not to undermine it. Like getting fully booked on your terms, which you were talking about there, like it doesn't matter what your version of that is. It might be 60 sessions a week. It might be 10. You need to figure that out. But once you get there, that is that's just, honestly, it's just the beginning. And that's what we did in our businesses. That's how we were able to grow them and scale them as well as we did. And now kind of what we help other people to do. But I guess today's episode is just to highlight that point that if you currently think once my schedule is full, there isn't really anywhere else to go. We just want to help you call bullshit on yourself with that and see how many other opportunities you have.
And it's also like we're trying to find people the path of least resistance, the path that is easiest to grow and make some money, do something fun, and do something that makes you feel good. So like we're trying to find that for people. And actually, like if you think about this swap, most people will think, oh, I've just got to go online. Actually, it's a lot harder to do that because you compete with more people. You've got to learn a whole bunch of new skills. You've got to spend all day on Instagram and Facebook making content and stuff. And some people, if you want to do that, amazing. But at least the people in our world, they want to keep that little bit of in-person stuff. So we are about trying to help the right person find the easiest way to make some more money, do something special without having to completely flip the script.
Yeah. The kind of saying in my head is that as your business gets bigger, your life should get better. And I think that doesn't happen for a lot of people because they just get stacked up with sessions back to back. Yeah. They panic, they're overwhelmed. They're then trying to maintain that whilst they're trying to learn a completely new skill, trying to approach a completely different audience in a completely different way. And actually your life gets worse. Yeah. The idea is that you want to grow a business that as it gets busier, you know what the next steps are, and you're working towards a bigger and better life for yourself, both through money, through time, through energy, through fulfillment, those kind of things.
Beautiful. So let's do the 3 phases next of the sequence. So to keep it nice and simple, 3 phases. One is called foundations, the second's growth, and the third is scale. So foundations, in short, is all about getting some of the fundamentals, the structure in place to start something. Now, typically that's either one-on-one personal training for us, or it might be small group training. Those are kind of the typical paths that people start out, but mostly one-to-one. And so to keep it really simple, we want a fair price for the product, the service that you're selling. The package itself, like what do we do to get the result? We want a simple onboarding way, a simple way to get people onboarded, and a simple way to get paid. Right? Those are basically the structure we need. But we want MVP. We don't want to go crazy on that. We want enough to get people results and want to be able to take some money in and get the first 10 or 15 clients. That's foundations. Anything you would add to that?
Just to explain what MVP is for anyone that doesn't know. So MVP stands for minimal viable product. And the idea is
you learn, sorry to jump in, you learned this from one of your clients? As a trainer, didn't you?
A lady called Naomi. She used to go into...
Go on, Naomi.
She used to go into banks, big banks, and she used to go into teams that had been working on a project for 2 years and nothing had happened. Yeah. They'd been paying these guys, 6-figure salaries and nothing had happened. Yeah. And so her job was to go in and say...
Ooh, expensive.
Yeah. Her job was to go in and say, right, guys, in 6 weeks, this thing's launching, so it needs to be ready. And what that did is it forced them to stop chasing perfection and to start just taking action. And in every sense, it was done. 6 weeks later, something was out there. It was working. It was making money. It wasn't perfect, but they were able to then learn from actually launching it and giving it to customers how to make it better. And so foundations for us is the same thing. Like let's get what we need. We don't want to wing this thing. But you also don't need to have your entire business model completely crafted to within an inch of its life. You need to start making money. You need to start coaching people. You need to get it out there to figure out what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. So let's cover those 4 basic things that you said: pricing, packaging, payment, onboarding. And then let's get those first 10 to 15 clients. Our framework for that is a 60-day process to do all of those things. Then we can zoom out. We can look at what's working, what's not working, what we want to tweak, what we want to change, and move on. That's
growth now. So phase 1, foundations. Phase 2 is growth. Now that we've got that structure in place, the products launch at the bank, the clients in the gym, to use a gym metaphor, they're in the gym, they're actually doing something with the body. Now we can start to perfect the program and tweak and perfect. So that's when we start building the 4 pillars, which we'll come to in a second. But the goal of growth is to get fully booked, as defined by the trainer. So they decide, okay, well, how many sessions do I want to do a week? Like what works for me and when do I fit them in? And then we define the bits that need to go around that. So it's a bit of coaching, a bit of programming, a bit of check-ins, whatever the thing is. And then some time out of the business, which a lot of trainers don't do, which is a conversation for another day. But the goal of growth, building up those, strengthening your pillars and getting those the 4 legs of a table, get that nice and strong. And then that takes us to the end of growth, which sets up scale. But before we do anything on growth, that you would say?
Yeah, I think in foundations, we do fast things that are going to get you some momentum.
Yeah, get started.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Growth is about stabilizing those things. So you're going to go from 10 to 15 clients to wherever you want to take it, let's say 30, but you're actually going to do it in a way that's a lot more sustainable. You're not going to be chasing necessarily the speed of results and the fast stuff. You're building a core. You're building something that has sustainability. It has consistency. It can cope with a higher volume of people.
Yeah.
It adds to the quality of your service. And there's 4 pillars that we focus on in order to do that. But yeah, ultimately we want you to grow and get to fully booked in this stage, but we also want you to do it in a way that you have evidence that this is going to be a business for the long term. You've not chased your way there. You've not cheated your way there. You've not lucked out. You've not been given a few clients from the gym manager. You actually have a business that has a model in each of the 4 pillars that is just continuous and could go forevermore.
Yeah. So that's growth. We'll come back to the numbers of like what we'd expect people to be earning at this level, because there's a bit of variance in that, but we'll mention that in a sec. Scale then for us is basically, okay, if you've got a fully booked diary, you've been doing that for a while, what it means is you're good at what you do. People like it, so they'll keep coming back. You're getting results because people are coming for a while, and inevitably results happen. And so what that says about you with the coach is that you're now quite knowledgeable. You're quite valuable. You've got a lot of experience. So this is the exciting bit about going beyond fully booked, is we just now need to employ a smarter business model, a better way of deploying, using your brain and your knowledge and your body. And so then we do something called a tiered model, which is just a different way of serving people. And we often create different levels. We'll talk about this in a later episode. But it's changing a business model, basically, putting something smarter, a bit more elegant in place, which allows you to earn more money in either the same or less time.
Yeah.
And that's what scale's all about for us.
Yeah. And
without losing what we're good at, right? Without losing that in-person piece.
Exactly. That's kind of the point, right? So some people try to do this too early. Like they haven't got the evidence that they've actually got something.
Yeah.
And they try to scale it way too early. But the most common thing is they get to the end of growth, they get fully booked, and they've got, a demand of people that want to work with them, but they just don't know how to supply it because they feel stuck in that one modality, that one thing that got them there. So going back to my point, when you've built these, when you've gone through the growth phase and you've made it sustainable, you've made it consistent, you have all of the evidence to suggest that you're ready for the next stage. And that's a big thing when I talk to our coaches, is to give them the confidence to move into scale. Yeah. Is like, look at the evidence that you've got around you. You are now generating leads every single week. Yeah. You know that of 10 leads, 2 of them are going to become paying clients. You have a payment model that is trusted and it's paying you well for your time. Yeah. And you have systems in place so that you could cope with more people if you didn't have to deliver, constant back-to-back sessions with these people. So now it's about creating a smarter model, like you said, where you can serve more people in a better way without it having to take all of your time. Yeah. And there's a few different routes that you can go down depending on who you serve and what you're passionate about. But if you haven't got that evidence, you're absolutely not ready for scale. If you've got that evidence and you've built it in the right way, scale is the most exciting phase to go into as a coach. Yeah. And the really important point, and the point that we try to hammer home as much as we can, is if you then transition to online, you're going back down to the bottom of a ladder. You're now completely changing the game. It's like you've built a butcher's shop and it's doing pretty well, and you go, cool, I'm going to go set up a bakery. Like, it's completely different. What we want to do is amplify what you've just been working on. We want to double down on the skill set and the evidence that you've got to create something bigger.
And I think just a nuance there is that people and I understand why trainers would do this, and we've seen many do it. And if it's your gig, fine, totally cool. But we want to make sure people are doing it for the right reasons. And I think people will go, well, I'm still helping the same sort of person get the same result, which is like using your analogy of saying, the bakery's still a shop, still on the high street, which is true. It's still a shop, but actually the product itself is very different. Probably how you sell it is very different. The type of customer does change because the person who wants in person is probably different than the person who maybe doesn't. 100%. And that's different. Probably the product and the way that it sells and the recurring nature of that is very different as well. Because online, as a product is much more detached, it's more remote, which means there is a much higher attrition. So although it might seem on the surface, it's another shop, I might as well just use my knowledge and go there. It's not the same. So we need to understand the nuances of that.
Yeah. And I think, with anything, with any business, if you've done a really good job to get it to a certain point, the next logical step is, cool, how do I amplify that thing?
Yeah.
And that's what we want to remind people of, is what's got you to this point.
Yeah.
You've worked really bloody hard to do it. So don't step away from that and jump into a new thing if you don't want to. There is another option.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. So one more thing to touch on there. So typically money wise, foundations is usually your first 3K based on what currency you're in.
And this is recurring revenue, right?
Recurring.
So again, a conversation for another day, but the idea is that your customers are not paying per session. They're not dialing into a 10-week transformation. They're paying a monthly subscription for the service that you're providing.
That's it. 2 to 3K at foundations, and then that takes you into growth. Growth usually is around 5 to 7, maybe up towards 10 if you're US or Australia. So, but the 7 is a fairly good number to guide on. If you're like 3, and a lot of trainers get to about 3 and they get stuck, but oftentimes they're just not using time well and they're not pricing and charging right. And there's not enough retention built into the product. So that's different problems to solve, but that speaks to the systemization of the 4 pillars and whatnot. So 5 to 7, upwards of 10, fully booked.
Yeah.
And then scale is really, we're looking at anywhere between 2 and 4x that, depending on what route you go, right? So that could be 10 to 20 is a nice range. And I think for most people you're now in the top 1% of earnings in any country where you happen to live, if you're in that region. And that's what we're trying to help. That's where we're trying to help trainers get. Yeah. Not become millionaires, but like 10 to 20 grand a month is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think, the realistic answer is that there is no ceiling on how far you can scale something, but that's our typical model that we'll move through. Yeah. Yes. 0 to 2 to 3K to get those foundations. Then from 2 to 3K to 5 to 7K is good evidence that you've grown and your diary's full. And then anything from 5 to 7K onwards is where you're really working at scaling.
Yeah. Okay. So let's do one more segment in this little chat. Let's talk about the pillars.
Yeah.
And kind of like you can then perhaps touch on how do I kind of analyze or like grade where I'm at on those pillars. So 4 pillars we got are attract, convert, serve, systemize. Let's just do a high level little summary of each one. So what's attract all about?
So attract is everything that you do that's within your control to generate leads, which is just somebody that's connected to you. They resonated with a conversation or a post or something that you've done, and how we take that person through to a prospect. And a prospect is someone that's actually genuinely interested in what it is that you're talking about. They're asking questions, they're leaning in, they want to find out some more. It's got nothing to do with selling. It's generating leads, turning them into prospects.
So that's first pillar. Second pillar is convert. What's convert all about?
So convert is when you have a prospect, it's actually how you're then able to showcase to that individual that you've got the solution to their problem. Out of all of the options that they have presented to them, how do we show them that you are the best solution?
Yeah.
And then how do we convert them into a monthly recurring revenue client so they're signed up onto your program? And then finally, how do we onboard them? What does the first 1 to 2 days look like when they join that helps them in their mind say, I've absolutely made the right decision here. This is great.
Yeah. So that's attract, telling it like a story. They've attracted the client, they've converted the client and onboarded them. Serve.
So our serve pillar, when we work with coaches, we don't want to tread on their technical toes too much. Like we want to work with coaches that have got a relatively good idea of how to actually coach people.
Which is most people, to be fair. Like most trainers are well equipped in that area.
You know enough is the key thing. Yeah. Like we could always improve our knowledge, but you know enough to help people and to change people's lives. Yeah. So we're not going to tell you whether Jane should do a split squat or a Bulgarian split squat. That's not what serve is about.
Definitely Bulgarian though, just for the point.
Yeah, for sure. We talk about the 3 R's. So R number 1 is results. Now, we know that you can't guarantee results because that's based on their input and their desire to change. But what you can guarantee is the environment for success. So what does your actual model look like? How do you deliver your coaching and how do you give people the best opportunity wherever they're at in their journey to get the outcome that they're looking for? Yeah. That's R number 1. R number 2 is retention. If you have a business that's generating a lot of leads and you're making a lot of conversions, but people are leaving 3 or 4 months later, there's a big hole in your business bucket, so to speak. Yeah. It's really difficult to grow it. And it puts a lot of pressure on your ability to sell. So we want to have an average retention of every client of 12 months. So some might leave earlier, some will leave a lot later, but your average is around 12 months. Yeah. And then the third R is referrals. If we can have a target and a system in place that gets every single client that works with you to refer just one new client to you every 12 months, you kind of have a self-sustaining business.
Yeah,
people,
so beautiful.
People stay with you on average for 12 months, but they also refer one person to you that then stays with you for 12 months.
Makes marketing so easy.
Yeah, like you're in a really solid position, and therefore you're closer to being able to scale.
Yeah. Fourth one, systemize.
Systemize. So a massively overused term. Let's keep it really simple. A system is going to help you do something to a higher volume. You'll be able to do more of the thing. You'll be able to maintain or even improve the quality of that thing. And you'll be able to do it without feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So as your numbers grow, the thing that you were doing that allowed you to service 5 clients probably will stress you out when you've got 30 of them. So you need to build simple systems that are going to allow you to stay on top of all the work that you're doing to be able to deal with more people, them not see a like diminishing return on your work, and for you to be able to do it and actually enjoy the journey.
Yeah. So we've got 4 pillars. I get that. All good. Nice. How do we go about, if there's a trainer watching this or listening to this, how do I go about grading, analyzing, judging where I'm at on each of those pillars? How do we think about that?
Yeah, so this is actually an exercise we've got for free. It's called the Genius Model, and you can check it out on our homepage. I think
well, at least that's what we call it. It's not what it's called on the homepage.
True,
but we've got a link to that in the description. We'll tell you about that in a minute. But I think we called it the plan or the guide to Fully Booked and Beyond.
Yes, yeah, that's right. So the idea with this is that you need to grade your business.
Yeah.
So if we just keep this simple for today's chat, you've got those 4 pillars: how we attract, how we convert, how we serve, how we systemize. You want to be able to look at the key elements of each one of those 4 pillars.
Yeah, because we break them down into 3 little subsections, don't we? So we take attract and then we break that out a little bit more, and then you've got your grading.
Yeah, and then we want to give things a color is probably the easiest way to do it.
Not for someone who's colorblind, though.
No, it was a nightmare doing that video.
When we did that, anyway, if you watch the video, you'll see it. It's quite funny.
Dave, is that green?
Yeah.
But no, like a bit like a traffic light. So
exactly like a traffic light.
It is.
Good point.
If you give it a green, then the idea behind that is that you're actually really happy with it and how it's performing, and it doesn't really need any work. It's working. Yeah. You would give it a yellow or an amber if it's okay, like it's moving, but it could be improved. It could do with an upgrade. Yeah. And then you would give something a red if it's failing or you're really unhappy with the outcome that you're getting. Yeah. And even if you just took those 4 pillars, just those 4 words, how well are you currently generating leads, turning them into prospects? You give it a green, an amber, or a red. Yeah. Once you've got that prospect, how good are you at turning them into a monthly recurring revenue client and onboarding them? Green, yellow, red. Yeah. When you've got that client in, how good are you at getting them results? How many referrals are you getting? And how long are they staying with you? Green, amber, red. And then finally, systems. What systems have you got in place to allow you to do this at a higher volume, to keep really good quality in what you're doing, and to allow you to do it without feeling stressed out? Yeah. Give it a color. Yeah. And once you've done that, you can take a step back and you can look at the colors that you've got and you can go, cool, well, what's the biggest red flag that I have here? That becomes your focus. The biggest problem is when people look at all of the shit that they've got to do and they try to attack it all at once.
And so let's zoom back out. The idea of this conversation today was about getting fully booked, but going beyond that. And I think that this model, and to be fair to you, it's a really good video. You check it out, it's in the description. And Craig will take you through those 4 pillars broken into each like 3 subsections. That gives us 12 things. It's a really nice place to get to when you can you get a nice zoomed out perspective of the business. What's good, what's not so good, what needs work. And I think that's really powerful, and it helps us. Like if you're listening or you follow along to this and you're not yet fully booked, doing that exercise will accelerate you to that point that we talked about today. Get you fully booked as the base camp, the fully booked base camp. But if you're already there and you're thinking, like, what's next for me? Like, how do I progress from here? Exactly the same process is valid, right? They can do that exercise, and by turning some of those reds into ambers or greens will help you move on to the next chapter so much more smoothly. Yeah,
I think the worst thing in the world is to go and do a program or a course that you have to follow point 1, point 2, point 3, and you're like, well, I'm already good at that. That's already good. Do I really need to change that? Yeah. the first thing that you need to do if you want to get fully booked and you want to learn, you want to build it in a way that you can go far beyond that, is you need to assess what you've already got.
Yeah.
Everybody listening to this, there's going to be certain things that you're already killer at. You're nailing it. You don't need to change it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
But in order to figure out what does need work, you need a little bit of time. You need a tool. You need a bit of a strategy so that you can actually zoom out and go, okay, well, these are all the important things. These things are going to get me to 10, 15, 20,000 pound a month, whatever the target is. Which ones need work today? Because you can't do 2 of them or 3 of them or 4 of them because it won't work.
Yeah.
Which one is the one that's going to make the biggest difference? And this exercise will really help you figure that out.
Cool. Beautiful way to wrap up the conversation. And so unless you've already gone, in the description of this video, we've got a prompt for you. But if you want this plan, it's a video that you did. It's a banger, I think, if you say so to yourself.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it.
Just DM Craig on Instagram. There's a link in the description, or the whatever you call it beneath the YouTube video. Just DM Craig the word plan, and we'll send it to you straight away. And you can get the link to the video. It's a training video. There's a little thing that you can. I mean, you tell them what to do to go along, as like to grade it out. You draw it out as you go along, or
yeah, it's really step by step. So you come on the journey with me on the video, and by the end of it, you'll know where your reds are, you'll know where your ambers are, you'll know where your greens are, and then you'll know what your next step needs to be from there.
Perfect. So DM Craig the word plan on Instagram, and we'll get it to you. But I think that's it for today.
Yeah, cool. Peace out.
A-Town down.